All right. So for this week's segment of the Rear View presented by BF Goodrich, this is the final of the 2015 Fiji Pro. It was event number 5 on that year's championship tour season. And you were absolutely on fire. I think starting in round 3, you put up 16.26 out of 20 against Ace, 17.26 in round 4 against Fanning and Joel, a perfect 20 in round 5 against Adam Melling, 16.6 in the quarters against Parco, and 16.93 in the semifinals against Jeremy. Is this the best event you've ever had in your life from just a consistently high-performing stance?
Oh, for sure. There and here and Chopes, they're like pretty, for me, waves that those points I can get heat in, heat out. And this one for sure was like, it all came together for me.
And how familiar are you at this point in your life, 2015, with the Reef here at Fiji? Oh, I think you're up on this first wave. So just walk us through this wave for you.
I think I remember just at the start of this heat, I was like, hey, this looks like a pretty decent wave. I want to just get things started. And that ended up being pretty nice little barrel and couple good turns there.
How important is it for you to start a heat, whether it's a final or not, with the first wave? Is it consistent for you every time, or does it depend on the competitor you're against?
I think it just depends on the wave. For me, I was at a left-hand point. I was like, this looks like a runner. It's got a nice draw. It's got some length to it. Because sometimes the waves at Fiji, like they can like taper off too quick, or maybe they're too long. And that just had like this nice line to it. And I remember just going, yeah, I'll give this a go.
And you can tell which ones are going to do that before, as you're paddling in. It's not something when you're up, you're like, oh, it looks like this one's going to be good.
It's pretty hard to tell. Like that wave was still pretty hard to read, but it did have that nice even line to it. Say if it stayed open through that middle part, the score could have been a lot higher, or things like that. But it was for the day probably a pretty average wave, and I'm not sure what I would have got score, but it might have been like a 6 or something. I'm not sure.
I think this one comes in at like a mid-7 for you is what you open up with.
Yeah, I just wanted to get going. Like the waves are pretty slow at this point in the day. Swell was slowing down, and yeah, I guess that was just more of a decision on just the conditions and this stage in the day. Like I knew it was slowing down. It just had that. Even the forecasters predicted that. So I just jumped on it. It seemed like a pretty fun wave. Got this like a vote system up. Pretty evenly split there too.
Yeah, for sure. How dialed in are you to forecasts and conditions during an event? I mean, I remember hearing stories about Aki would like call his friends down the coast and find out that like a northerly was coming through, and right before the final, and he'd like go out and he'd catch like 15 waves right away, like little tiny ones, and his competitor would be like, what's he doing? And then the northerly would come through and just blast the lineup, and that was the heat. Like I always cracked up because I'm like, I love that level of like detail that people would hit on. How dialed in are you on conditions and how often they change? Is it something you're thinking of proactively, or you just kind of go out and ride whatever's in front of you?
I'm always trying to take notice of what's happening. So look, this is a much bigger set wave and probably the more obvious choice for this day. But there you go. It's just this wave is such a trick. Like sometimes they're too long, but that looked like a perfect wave to begin with. And
he wouldn't have known paddling in. He's just kind of like rolling in into the first ledge and thinking and kind of gambling and saying, I hope this one stays open.
Man, looks like a 10-point ride right there. Like that whole style of that wave was like, that's a 10. Yeah, I fully remember going, oh my God, look at this wave. Oh
Your 7.5's not looking good at this point. You're like, oh no.
Yeah, why did I pick that first 7.5? But that's just that reef. It's really hard to pick. You got to pick the ones with a good line, and that one looked like maybe it was just a little too long. And it turned out it was. But I would have said yes if I had priority. I would have went that way for sure.
Looked like you took a look at it too.
Oh, I bet I would have. Man, it looks like such a nice wave. And he did such a nice fade off the bottom, and then it just throws out so nice through there. Oh, I
You,
wish there was still a vent at this wave. Yeah,
it's
just a bit long,
the
that
best
one.
one.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned you
Yeah.
and Julian were kind of you guys are generational contemporaries. You're about the same age.
Yeah.
What's been your relationship like when Julian throughout your career? Are you guys friends together? Do you not talk as much as you used to? Do you talk more? Was there ever any kind of tension between you guys?
Well, we were always I'm a few years younger, but I
Hmm.
was always kind of the younger one stepping up into that the gang. You know what I mean? Like kind of Wilco and Julian and some just they were just a touch older than me, and like I was just a bit younger, but we always got along. We both had kids pretty similar age. And that we really enjoyed that. Like, oh, I really enjoy the dad life and watching him be a father, and we kind of talk about that stuff, and then which is pretty fun, and the challenges of that. Then there's like he's been definitely supportive throughout my career. I've had the head injury and whatnot, and he was very supportive and checking in with me and seeing how I was going and things like that there. So that was nice to have, and I'm sure I'd be there for him the same as well, checking in with him. And so yeah, we've had a pretty good relationship throughout the career. And I think we see each other on tour all the time, and then when we come home, what I've found even with Wilco, like we'll be hanging out all the time when we're on tour, and then we get home, which is probably not that much at all of the year, which is maybe 4 months of the year, and we don't really hang out or like catch up every day like we do for the other 8 months of the year. So we always talk about it too, like, oh, what? Like, and we always just come to this agreement, like, we probably just like get home and just want to like chill out and like,
That's kind of that balance
have
you're
that.
talking about too. It's like, well, you kind of have your tour life and your tour community and your friends and your family there. And it's like you spend all your time. You're like, well, man, if I did that when I got home too, it's just never ending. I kind of have to level out at some point.
Yeah. And you want to catch up with all your friends circles at home and whatnot. You just don't find as much time for your friends that are on tour. So, yeah, that's just kind of how all of my relationships on tour have gone. Really, it's like an agreed upon friendship. Like,
I'll see you at the airport when we're on our way to the next stop.
yeah. I'll call you I'll call you to catch up for a wave. And it's just like, no, I'll see you at the next event at the airport.
the I've got a couple questions there, but I liked what you said about before where you're like, well, I was a little bit younger. So you're actually kind of in these guys' rear view, like, because there's less expectation on you because they're a little bit older and more established, but you're kind of coming in and it's probably a little bit more fun sometimes because you're like, oh, well, I have less pressure to perform, but if I beat you, you're a little bit older, you're supposed to be better than me kind of thing. And so they're probably psyched to have you push them, but at the same time, they're like, oh man, this kid's behind me again. Like I got to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, we've like just throughout our whole career, like I was always just stepping up into just that 2 years is just enough. Whereas like there was that enough performance, like age gap open up where if I was in the under 16s, they were in the under 18s.
Right. Yeah.
But once we went into the juniors, we were all in there together and mixing it up. And then, I'll be in the juniors. I was only in the juniors like a year or two. Then they were gone. They were off on the QS. So that was kind of, I kind of just missed. But we always met up there for a year or two in those brackets. Like I remember the qualifying series, we met up, and then it was kind of it was Wilco, Julian, and I. So we kind of always felt like whether it was the Pro Junior Series, the World Tour, or the qualifying series, we always had those clashes and those heats. But never so much so that we were like battling or fighting right. or scrapping each other. Like there was always that bigger fish to fry, which like we were always coming up against we get on tour and there was like the Geordies and Danes and Jeremy and we were a part of like a generational group, whereas we weren't so focused on each other. We were definitely like, there was a bigger competitive field than each other. Like there was Mick, there was Joel, there was Taj, there was Kelly.
You guys are kind of unified against another group or several different groups, whether it was a generational thing or a national thing or something like that.
Yeah, we definitely didn't have that like turn on us. Like we weren't, those three we weren't just at the top and turning on ourselves, you know,
right?
Which is probably,
right.
we were like, well, there's like, we're on the tour now and there's Mick and Joel and Taj and Kelly and Andy and those guys that were like, well, there was always this step ahead of us. So that's probably how we're all still great friends.
but are you saying too, because you mentioned it before, we don't really see each other in between. So when you're home and you're going for surf or you're training or you're trying to keep sharp, you don't try to meet up with other CT guys at home, or?
I meet up with Conor O'Leary a lot. We hang out a fair bit. Just we're in the same town, but I mean, we like to meet up. Like one thing I've noticed is like everyone has their own programs, right, and how they function best, and to then go, all right, well, we're going to have 3 World Tour surfers all meet up in the one day. You know, I've got a son, and then someone's got to walk the dogs, or someone, you know, Wilco has like 7 dogs, and then I had a child. Like it just didn't, it just doesn't like match up every day. So out of the week, you might get one surf together. But
I guess there's also while the benefit might be that you guys push each other performance-wise, that's like 3 alpha predators all at the same table trying to eat, so there's less waves to go around.
That would be horrible. Imagine that.
That's probably why the Coffin kids call me up to surf all the time. They're like, hey, you want to go surf? And I'm like, yeah, I'm non-threatening. I'll just take whatever you don't want. It's easy.
Yeah. Anything like that. If we rocked up to a surf spot and it was like 3 World Tour guys get out of the car, that would be some trouble. But like Wilco, Connor and I, we all, and Stuart Kennedy, and I mean, Adam Melling, we're all in a really close radius. But if we all rocked up at the same break, I tell you what, people would be like, oh my God.
Are you the kind of guy that talks?
With Connor a lot.
Oh, that's cool. And he's back on tour now, which is great.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love training with Connor. We get along great, and just he's a solid trainer, and I love the way he works, and man, he's a goofy footer too. So we're natural fans.
So there's been a little bit of gap in terms of action here on a day like today. You have to be obviously really selective with what's coming through. You've got priority here. What's going through your mind? It's been 10 minutes. You got a 7.5. Julian doesn't have much. Like, what are you hunting for at this point in the heat?
Looks like there's a wave coming now. This is what you're looking for. You're looking for these roll-ins that have some double ups. I don't know if this is a great wave, but looks like I'm on here.
Walk us through it.
Geez, that's a nice wave. Yeah, well, that's what you're looking for, those whitewash roll-ins. I'm not sure what the score would be, but it's
a great barrel. But even as you said, like it loaded up on that ledge, and then it still tapered off quite a lot at the end. You know, it wasn't like this long, I'm going to do 15 maneuvers after the barrel kind of wave.
Yeah, no, that had the right line to it, where it was like enough so that you're going to get barrel, but enough. Even you can see me racing there, but you don't know. I'm trying to figure out if it's going to go longer or stop. It was kind of hard to see at that stage, but. This wave is pretty funny. Like it rolls in from this back ledge on these swells, and I don't know if you see this takeoff here, but I'm in like 4 foot of whitewash as I'm trying to get to my feet, and that is like, I mean, this wave, it's such a gamble to do because you can just basically get so flogged. Like that whitewash is so deceiving. I went back for a free surf trip at the end of last year before Pi. Like. The sides of this can just like flog you and roll you.
Yeah, if you don't get around that corner, you're in like the worst spot on the reef.
Oh, you've blown it completely. I tried to do this same takeoff at a free surf trip just recently, and I went to do it, and I was like, "What am I doing?" And I like pulled back, and then I just got sucked over backwards, and so like obviously there's the positive one there, which turned out great. But there's some ones that turn out horribly wrong.
When you're in a free surf, like, and the conditions are like this, like what percentage of waves like that do you think are ones that you're nailing, you're getting right, you're getting barreled, and which ones, like what percentage do you think you just, oh, it just didn't work out, I got sucked over the falls or smashed?
Like what percentage in heats work out, or
No, like in a
what
free
percentage?
surf, like how much risk are you taking in free surf versus the heat, I guess.
I think I take more risk in a oh, here's Jules on a little nugget. I was just a bit shorter, and it looks like that section was just a bit too long. But it had a good double up to it. Yeah, free surfs. You kind of. I'll probably take less risks in free surfs. More like it's kind of a bit unnecessary sometimes, and like there's some serious consequences at these waves. Maybe that's me now. Maybe back then. It's hard to say. I can't. It was probably even, but definitely when it comes to heats, you just get this like thing about you where like if a wave pops up and you have a chance to go, like you want to try and make it, like you want to go. Like that's what I felt throughout these. Well, even still now, if that big wave comes through, there would be barely a time where I know Julian or any of the guys in singlets, if that wave comes through at Chopes or here or whatever, that there won't be hardly ever a time that they pull back.
It feels like that's actually been like a huge change on tour, not just in terms of big waves or serious waves or barrels, but like high performance maneuvers or aerials or anything like that. It almost seems like when I started, like back in 05, 06, there was still this mentality of I'm going to surf conservatively in my heat to win, because that's kind of how the format was structured. It's kind of how like scoring wasn't really pushed. I think people, in terms of progressing to like high risk maneuvers, their strike rate wasn't as high as it was. And that really changed with your generation. I really think that changed in the sense of, you now hear a lot of the young guys going like, oh yeah, I try as hard as I can in heats, and I kind of just practice in free surfs. Do you think that's right?
Yeah, I would have to agree. I I think there's obviously a balance to it, which I think sometimes maybe the young guys can get wrong, and even some of the older guys. But man, there's not many occasions these days where you can go, oh, I just like safety surfed that heat and got through. Or,
Yeah.
the judges will pick it apart. They'll go, not quite. Or, you know, they'll see through it now. And them seeing through that, then seeing through that with the scores helps the next generation go, oh, there's still a chance for me to throw it everything I got at this heat. Whereas I think in the past, some of the scores were a bit more lenient, or a bit more like forgiving, and, oh yeah, that was still an 8, that was still pretty good. And it would shut the door or put the pressure too much on the up and comer who wants to throw that big air or just throw something, and it can put it just out of reach. Even if they throw it, they might be just out of reach anyway. But now the scoring is like, oh no, like that's a 6.5. Like that 8 is now 6.5. And I feel like that is the difference, is a 1.5 or a point at least. It's come down. And that 1.5 that's come down has made way for someone just to throw it all out there, try as hard as they can, and get into that like high scoring zone. And the same with the, like chokes, like everyone charges now. Whereas back 10 years ago, there was definitely some heats where you're like, oh, this guy's not gonna go one of those waves or this or that. But now it's for sure, it's everyone's on.
It's funny, like I've traveled with the judges pretty much my whole career, and they just like cop all sorts of hell from everybody all the time. Like everyone on social media, and everyone's got an opinion and this and that. And I mean, even on this, even I always say this, like when we're at an event, I'm like, look, like there's 36 guys in the event, there's 18 women. Like the end of the day, only at the end of the event, only one surfer is going to be happy because everyone else is going to feel like they got underscored. And even that person's probably like, yeah, I got underscored too, you know? So they just cop so much shit. But I think the thing that goes unappreciated is throughout that, at least in my experience, like the 2006 to the modern era, they are hugely responsible for encouraging better surfing, you know, through the way they've interpreted scoring and the way they've rewarded like just surfers pushing themselves and keeping those scores low for conservative surfing.
Yeah. Well, I think they've had a huge part in the way world titles have unfolded. Mm-hmm. The way they want to judge is basically what's dictated champions and dictated the top 5, the top 10, even the people that are going to fall off. When I first qualified, there was like a really big wave of airs and variety of airs. Guys weren't doing the same. Like now you'll see a lot of the same air reverse that happens. It's a full rotation. It's sick. It's mental. But every heat you'll see maybe say like the Portugal one where Italo wins. It would be the same air every single time that he tries it and we'll get the score. Mm-hmm. Whereas back when I first qualified, you would have seen slobs, mutes, right. Different, like you had Josh Kerr doing stale fishes, you had Kelly. There was just so many different variations. But at that time, the judging wasn't really, there was no real benefit in doing that crazy big stuff. And it definitely came, I felt that at that time, and I know I've had this chat with others that, you know, we all kind of stopped going there because there was no reward system. And we were more focused on our rail surfing and whatnot. And you know, that was the times where there was world champions that were doing rail surfing and that was being rewarded. And he looks like another roll-in's coming.
It looks like maybe a replay of that 9.6 you got.
Oh, no, yeah, they're just replaying that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, it says live.
Yeah,
it's not.
Was it?
No, I think they just Strider's live. You're replaying at the moment.
Yeah. But yeah, like the conversation of how much they've played a role. Like I remember distinctively what really changed my view on them scoring airs was Jadson Andre. And it's been spoken about before. Like he was an absolute gun at airs, and he would do 2 of the biggest airs you've ever seen on one wave, and he would get a 4-point ride. And it was just like, wow, like this is not liked. This is, you know, there's something here that's not quite, you know, being picked up on. And I definitely felt that was changed. But that throughout the years, well, I feel like we're back to that place now where Jadson can go and throw that big air and we'll get an 8.5 on this day right now. But back in 2011, if he threw that air, that's a 4-point ride because they've seen it before. And I tell you, that is the influence that judges have. That guy was off tour. But right now, Jadson could have the best year of his entire career.
He and I talked exactly about that. And he thinks he thought 2020 was going to be his best year, so probably 2021 will be. But I think you're totally right. Like, and I think that the world's best surfers, especially at that time, had like an outsized influence on it as well. I remember Jadson beat Kelly your rookie year because you guys were actually pretty close. I think you guys finished 1 and really 2 close on the QS, and you guys are really good friends. He beat Kelly doing. And people wrote him off, like he did the same air reverse and beat Kelly. I watched that event not too long ago. He did not. Like he's like, there's variations. He's doing huge airs. Like he's off axis. Like there's really cool things he's doing. But the narrative that came out of it was like kind of like Kelly drove that in a big way. He's like, he just beat me with air reverses. Like I'll see how he does at like J Bay or Tahiti or something, you know. And I think like that has an impact on, I mean, it's a subjectively scored sport. I think that has an impact on how scoring evolves. And as you said, like he's doing the same surfing the next year. He's getting 75% or 50% of the score. And only now is he kind of reincorporating that into his repertoire because it wasn't scoring for years.
Man, he cut it out. He just stopped doing it. And a lot of us, and I think, you know, I say the judges, but I also say the top guys at that time, they had a big influence as well over the judges that were saying, hey, that's not cool. Like they're not, you know, he's just doing that air and that's all he's doing. And it got so frowned upon. And it really did. I felt like that did put a big pause or whatever the working was then. And it might sound this or that. It's just the way it went. And it's not a secret. It's clearly happened. And then now you know, a turnaround. I for sure, like the scoring changed and Judson had won like 3 or 4, maybe 2 QS events and placed in the finals of 3 or 4 QS events throughout the year. Mm-hmm. So I was like, straight away, I was like, 2020 is going to be a big year for him because they've changed their way of thinking as to one-off big maneuvers can be massive. And that's accepted now. And that's, and not just by the judges, but also like by the peers and
the top surfers in the surfing world.
The top surfers, sure. Exactly, the surfing world. They want to see that. They want to, you know, we're at J-Bay and they don't mind if someone races half the wave, does a few kind of average turns and then just throws a huge spinner into the flats like Chloe Dino last year and get like a massive score. We don't mind seeing that now. Yeah. We don't mind that he didn't really like tee off on every single turn. We love to see the huge maneuvers now. So
I think there's an element too of that, like Jadson had to kind of go out of his way to prove he has a rail game and he has a barrel game. Like he always kind of had it. I'm sure it got better over the years, but like he kind of had to go out. And I'm not even saying it was necessary, but he probably had to, and go and prove that he had those parts of his surfing to make it look like he wasn't a one-trick pony, right? So now his airs score better because everyone understands he's like a comprehensive surfer.
Yeah, it's a tricky game. I think he definitely got better at all of those things when he stopped doing those big one-off airs. But yeah, like, I think that whole judging thing has been so interesting to be. I've had that 10 years to experience all sides of that. Be on the sides of like, yeah, I got overscored, or yeah, I got underscored. You know, but yeah, hey, this is a pretty pivotal time in the heat. He's in a combo right now. But in the last 5 minutes, and he has priority. Now, this is like that wave there was like a paddle, and I was trying to go, but didn't really want that wave.
Right.
And this is
another
the next
roll
wave
in for you.
Oh, no. This is the roll in, and this was my first 10 of the final. And I mean, I don't think it was a perfect wave, but I felt like that combination of that barrel and that turn, I liked it. I loved it, as you can see my claim.
Well, and it's snap decisions, right? Like Julian could have waited and gotten that wave. Instead, he went on the crappy one before it, and he went on the third one, which didn't work out. And he must be like so frustrated at this point. He's probably just like, Jesus.
Well, like when I went back and watched this heat, I realized that right there was the catalyst of me winning the final, because if he didn't go that first wave, my fake didn't work out, then he would have gone this wave for sure and probably got, you know, a 10 or whatever, or done something equally as good. And there's still another 10-point ride in this heat. So it could have switched just like that, from him being comboed to me on the other foot being comboed.
Do you talk to your competitors out there? Like there was that quite big lull before this exchange. Do you talk to your competitors out there?
We didn't really chat that much. Like your eyes are peeled on this second reef, these roll-ins, just trying to wait to see what's happening. And there's some currents and stuff at Fiji. The wind was howling. we were kind of constantly checking in on where we were out in the lineup. But I mean, there's been times I've chatted to competitors and times that we just don't. But yeah, this was definitely one of them heats that just unfolded. Like we had like probably a good 25. We've been chatting away, right? And there's been 25 minutes of no waves caught, and then this pretty much all happens in this last 5 minutes. Well, my waves do anyway, and Julian gets a few more waves, but he just gets on the wrong side of the good waves on the set. I think this is the next
and
one
as you
coming
said,
through now.
it's that little rhythm too, right? Like there were a few major moments in this heat, and you were just in rhythm on each moment. And as you said, if it had swung back and forth, it could have been very, very close because there's tens out there that he could have put on the scoring line, and you would have been on the wrong wave, right?
Totally. Like if like this is the second 10, and I know for sure he would have made this barrel. Like, he's that talented, and yeah, that was my second 10. But that he was on the jet ski. If he didn't even go that third wave, that wave would have been his. That last 10-point ride. So there was like so many different scenarios that played out in that heat that I was like, wow, like it just happened and unfolded in a way for me to be able to get those 2 10s and a 9.6. So it was just one of them heats. I was just having one of those events really, and heats, and
so I was going to ask about that because we kind of outlined like the rampage you'd gone on up until this final, up until pretty much from round 3 onwards. This is the second perfect 20 for you in the event. It's never happened before or since for a single competitor in surfing history. Did this event feel different? Did you just feel like, was there something about it? Were you buzzing? Was it just a heightened rhythm compared to all the other events? Like, I just want to know, did it feel different for you because you were just in such a rarefied space?
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of them events where I turned up, I had all the good boards, I'd tested all my boards out, I'd surfed, I'd already by this stage been on a trip to Chopes, I'd surfed a few heavier waves down the south coast, and like that's just what I love down here, and I always look for those type of waves. And I just had everything dialed in. So I went over there, and it just kind of happened. I had great boards, good headspace. There's so much wild stuff happens in the channel, man. Boats crashing into each other. Still makes me laugh now. I think I fell out of that boat. I don't think I jumped.
It was a big deal. Like the rivalry between Namotu and Tavarua too, because Namotu is traditionally where all the Australians stay. But I think Julian was on Tavarua that year because I think he was there with Ashley, if I remember right.
That's right. Yeah. He was. Yeah, that rivalry's pretty funny, hey, and it for sure happens. Like we get pretty stoked out over on Namotu and sitting at the bar and yelling and screaming at the TV and whatnot. So yeah, there's some funny stories that come out over there. Obviously, you see all the shenanigans that go on. You've got the guys that there's this tradition. Your first year on there, you've got to have a skull drag, and it's this drink that has about 8 different shots in it, or 8 or 9 standard drinks or something in the one drink, and we just kind of put this like snorkel mask on, and it goes all out to the top, and at the top it has this like open skull, and they tip the drink down there, and it's down the hatch. And it's just one of them things. I was a rookie coming on tour, and that was the tradition, and it's kept up every year. Like everyone's just like, yep, all right, and that's how it goes. So it's some funny things like that with those.
Oh, it's a real thing. Yeah, I first went over there for the Volcom events back when Volcom did the Fiji events. I don't remember. I had like 3 or 4, 5 years doing those events, and I always stayed on Tavarua because that's where they put me. And I'd never done one. And then when I got the brand gig back in 2017, I think it was, the Motu guys were like, well, you know, you're half Australian. You should come over here and pay your respects and do one. And it's, yeah, I didn't think it was that bad. A few of the people that did it with me didn't end up so right.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sova, the bar lady, she can definitely stack them wrong. And
it's their version of entertainment for sure.
Oh yeah, and then like sometimes you have one, and then you just see sometimes someone's that tough guy's like, oh, I'm having another one, and Sova just like doesn't put any alcohol in it because like,
yeah, and she knows really that's the end of you.
Yeah, if she really wants to get rid of them, she'll put alcohol in it, and it'll be like good night.
Do you like that? Well, if so, subscribe over there and then watch more videos over there. And then tell us your favorite videos down there. It's a 3-step process. Do them all now.